How does a normal night turn into loud pounding at 2 a.m., with my ex at my gate holding a crowbar and shouting threats? Why did I feel my whole body lock up until a calm voice behind me told me to open the door and step back? And how did my ex go from loud and fearless to pale and running the second he saw who stood beside me? My name is Nate. I am 44. I live in a small house on a quiet street, the kind where people wave and talk about lawns. Most days my life looks normal from the outside. I go to work, I make dinner, I help my daughter with school, I keep my head down. That night started the same way. I put the dishes away, I checked the locks like I always did. I turned off the lights, I sat at the edge of my bed and listened to the house settle. The heater clicked, the fridge hummed. My daughter Leah was asleep in the room across the hall. I had been sleeping badly for months, but I still fell asleep. It was the first real quiet I had felt all day. Then the sound came. It was a hard, deep thump, not a normal knock. It hit the front gate first, then the fence, then the metal latch. The noise ran through the house like a drum. Another thump followed right away, louder, sharper, like something heavy was striking metal on purpose. My eyes opened fast. My heart felt like it was trying to climb into my throat. For a second, I did not move. I just listened. I heard a third hit. I heard a voice outside. It was loud. It was angry. It was close enough to carry into my hallway. I reached for my phone and checked the time. It was after 2 in the morning. I did not go to the door. I had learned not to rush into Riley's storms. Riley was my ex-partner. We were together for years. We have Leah. Riley could be charming in public, but at home, Riley liked control. After we split, that need for control did not stop. It just changed shape. I slid out of bed and stepped into the hallway. I kept my breathing slow. I told myself to move in steps, one thing at a time. I walked to Leah's door first. I tapped lightly and opened it. She was half awake, sitting up with her hair messy. Her eyes were wide. She asked what the sound was, but her voice was small. I told her it was just noise outside. I told her to stay in her room. I told her to keep the door closed and stay away from the window. I told her I would handle it. She did not argue. She just nodded. She looked like she wanted to ask more, but she did not. That look cut deeper than the noise. A child should not learn that kind of silence. I closed her door and stood in the hallway again. The thumping returned. It was steady, like someone was trying to prove a point. The voice outside kept rising and falling. I could not make out every word, but I could hear my name. I could hear the tone. Riley was performing anger, like it was a show meant for an audience. I walked to the side window near the living room, the one that let me see the front gate at an angle. I moved slow and stayed back from the glass. The streetlight outside threw a pale strip of light across the driveway. That is when I saw Riley. Riley stood at the front gate with a crowbar in one hand. Riley kept striking the gate latch with it. Not enough to break it, but enough to shake it and wake the whole block. Riley's shoulders were tense. Riley's face looked tight and sharp, like a mask that had been worn too long. Riley shouted toward the house. Riley said I was hiding. Riley said I was scared. Riley said I did not have the right to keep the door closed. Riley said I thought I could control everything by being quiet. I did not respond. I did not step outside. I had learned that Riley loved reactions. Riley loved turning my fear into a story about my weakness. If I shouted back, Riley would later say I was unstable. If I opened the door alone, Riley would later say I invited the contact. I stayed inside and watched. I noticed details without trying to. I noticed where Riley stood, close to the camera line of the streetlight. I noticed Riley kept glancing toward the street as if waiting for someone to see. I noticed Riley's phone was in the other hand at times, lifted like it might be recording. I felt cold in my arms, but my mind stayed clear. I told myself to keep Leah safe and keep the situation clean. I told myself to keep my voice steady if I had to speak. I told myself to avoid words I could not take back. The thumping paused. Then it came again, harder. The gate rattled. The metal squealed. Riley's voice rose. Riley said I was going to regret it. Riley said I was going to lose everything if I kept playing games. Riley said I was not the one with power. That part was always Riley's favorite. Power. Riley treated life like a contest. Riley needed a winner and a loser in every scene. When we were together, Riley used money and attention as levers. After we split, Riley used noise and fear. I stepped back from the window and moved toward the front door. I stopped in the living room and listened. My hands were slightly shaky, but I kept them low and still. I did not want Leah to see me look scared if she peeked out. I did not want to call anyone in a panic. I did not want to turn this into a neighborhood circus. I had already lived through enough of Riley's public scenes to know how they worked. Riley would push, then point at my reaction. Riley would stir the water, then blame me for the mess. I stood near the door without touching it. I looked at the deadbolt. I looked at the chain. I looked at the small gap under the door where cold air slipped through. That is when I heard movement behind me, a soft step in the hallway, a calm exhale, a presence that did not rush. I turned slowly, expecting Leah, but it was not her. It was Marla from next door. Marla was in her late 50s. She kept her gray hair pulled back. She wore simple clothes and sturdy shoes, like someone who dressed for early mornings. She was the kind of person who carried quiet authority without trying. She had lived on this street longer than I had. People listened when she spoke, even when she spoke softly. I did not understand why she was in my house at first. Then I remembered the side door near the kitchen. I kept it locked, but earlier that week the latch had been sticking. I had planned to fix it on the weekend. I had been too tired. Now I felt that mistake like a weight in my chest. But Marla did not look panicked. She did not look confused. She looked focused. She spoke in a low voice. She told me to open the front door, but to stay behind her. She told me to keep my hands visible and keep my voice quiet. She said she would handle the contact. For a moment, I just stared at her. My brain tried to catch up. I wanted to ask questions, but the noise outside filled the space where questions would go. Marla did not repeat herself. She just stood there, steady. Her calm made the room feel different. It did not erase my fear, but it gave my fear edges. It gave it limits. I swallowed and nodded. I checked that Leah's door was still closed. I listened for any sound from her room. I heard nothing. I hoped she stayed in bed like I asked. Then I reached for the front door lock. My fingers felt stiff. I took the chain off. I unlocked the deadbolt. I pulled the door open a few inches. Cold air rushed in. So did Riley's voice. Riley was closer now. Riley stepped toward the porch as soon as the door moved. Riley started talking fast, like the opening of a speech. Riley said I had no right to keep Leah from Riley. Riley said I was trying to punish Riley by acting calm. Riley said I thought I was better than everyone. I did not answer. I kept my eyes on Riley's hands. I saw the crowbar held at an angle, not raised, but present. It made the message clear without needing more words. Then Marla stepped into the doorway, just one step forward, and she became the frame of the scene. She did not block the view completely, but she changed who was in control of it. Riley's voice stumbled for half a second. Riley's eyes moved up and down, like Riley was trying to place Marla in the story. Marla spoke with the same low tone. She addressed Riley by full name, not a nickname, not a casual greeting. The way she said it sounded formal, like a line written on a form. Riley tried to laugh it off. Riley tried to act like it was nothing. Riley said Marla should mind her business. Riley said this was private. Marla did not raise her voice. She did not argue. She said the street did not belong to Riley. She said the noise did not belong to Riley. She said the gate did not belong to Riley. She said there were rules, and Riley was crossing them. Riley's face tightened. Riley looked past Marla toward me, searching for the old dynamic. Riley wanted to pull me into the scene. Riley wanted my voice, my reaction, my emotion. Riley wanted me as a prop. I stayed quiet and looked at the porch floor, then at the driveway, then at Riley's posture. I watched the way Riley shifted weight from foot to foot. The confidence started leaking out, not all at once, but in small signs. Marla took another half step forward, still within the doorframe, still calm. She did not threaten. She did not make dramatic moves. She simply acted like she had done this before and knew the outcome. Riley's grip on the crowbar changed. The tool lowered a little. Riley's shoulders pulled back like someone suddenly aware of being seen. Riley asked why Marla was here. Riley asked what Marla thought she was doing. Riley demanded an explanation. Marla said she heard the noise. She said she saw the gate. She said she recognized the pattern. She said she had dealt with this kind of behavior in the past, and it never ended well for the person making the noise. Riley went quiet for a beat. It was not a peaceful quiet. It was the kind of quiet that comes when someone realizes the room is not theirs anymore. Riley's eyes darted toward the street again. Riley looked at the neighbor's windows. Riley looked at the streetlight. Riley looked down at the phone. Marla kept her voice even. She told Riley to leave. She told Riley to stop contacting me at night. She told Riley that if Riley wanted to talk about Leah, it would happen during proper hours and through proper channels. Riley tried to push back with words. Riley said I was turning people against Riley. Riley said I was hiding behind others. Riley said I was weak. Marla did not react to that. She did not defend me with compliments. She did not insult Riley. She simply repeated that Riley needed to leave. That repetition did something. Riley's breathing changed. Riley looked like someone realizing there was no good ending to this scene. Riley's voice grew smaller, not softer, but less sure. I felt something in my chest loosen. Not relief, exactly. More like a clear understanding. Riley's power was not real power. It was social pressure. It worked in parking lots and kitchens. It worked in places where people avoided conflict to keep peace. It did not work when someone refused to play. Riley took a step back from the porch. The crowbar hung low at Riley's side now. Riley muttered that this was not over. Riley said I would pay for it. Riley said I was making a mistake. Marla did not move. She did not chase. She did not respond to the last words. Riley turned and walked fast toward the gate. The gate rattled one more time as Riley pushed it open. Riley glanced back once, like a person trying to memorize the scene for later. Then Riley left, moving down the street under the streetlights, smaller with each step. I stayed in the doorway for a moment, still quiet. My hands were steady again, but my legs felt weak. The night air tasted sharp. The house behind me felt fragile, like it had thin walls. Marla stepped back inside and gently closed the door. She locked it without asking. She told me to check on Leah. She told me to fix the side door latch in the morning. She told me, in the same calm tone, that this kind of night was not the start of something new. It was the end of my pretending it would go away on its own. I walked to Leah's room. I opened the door slowly. She was sitting up again, hugging a pillow tight. She asked if Riley was gone. I told her yes. I told her she was safe. I told her she could sleep. She looked at me for a long second. Then she asked who the neighbor was and why Riley suddenly left. I hesitated. I did not want to place adult fear into a child's hands. So I told Leah the simplest true thing. I told her that some people only act loud when they think nobody will answer them in the right way. Leah nodded, like she understood more than she should. When I left her room, I went back to the living room. Marla stood by my front window, looking out at the quiet street like she was checking the lock on the whole block. She told me to sit down. She told me to breathe. I sat. I listened to the house again. The heater clicked, the fridge hummed, but the quiet felt different now. Outside, the gate stood still. The latch was crooked, but it held. And for the first time in a long time, I understood something with full clarity. Riley did not run because Riley suddenly respected me. Riley ran because Riley recognized Marla's kind of calm, the kind that comes from knowing exactly how the system works and how quickly loud behavior becomes a record when the right person is watching. The next morning, my house looked normal again. Sunlight came through the curtains. The street outside was quiet. Birds sat on the power line like nothing happened. If you did not hear the gate at 2 a.m., you would never guess. But my body remembered. My shoulders stayed tight even after coffee. My ears kept searching for sound. I checked the front gate twice before I left for work. I checked Leah's window before I drove her to school. Leah did not talk much in the car. She kept looking out at the passing houses. Her hands stayed in her lap. She was 12, but that morning she looked younger. When we pulled into the school parking lot, I saw Riley's car right away. It was parked near the front, like always. Riley liked to be seen. Riley liked to look like the parent in control. I told Leah to take her backpack and walk straight inside. I told her I would watch until she reached the door. She nodded and got out without looking back. Riley stepped out of the car as soon as Leah reached the sidewalk. Riley wore a clean jacket and neat shoes, like it was a photo day. Riley smiled in my direction, but it did not reach the eyes. Riley walked toward me with that same confident pace, like the parking lot belonged to them. People were around. Other parents stood near their cars, talking in small groups. A teacher waved at a child. It was the kind of place where nobody wanted trouble. Riley stopped close enough that I could smell strong mint gum. Riley spoke in a clear voice, not loud, but loud enough for nearby people to hear. Riley said I was going to regret last night. Riley said I was hiding behind an older woman now. Riley said it was embarrassing. I did not answer. I kept my face neutral. I nodded once like I understood. Riley leaned closer. Riley said I always played the quiet role. Riley said I liked to look innocent. Riley said I thought I could act calm and make Riley look bad. I looked past Riley toward the school doors. I saw Leah disappear inside. I told myself the only goal was to keep her day normal. Riley's smile tightened. Riley said I needed to remember who made my life stable in the first place. Riley said I would not last without Riley pushing me. Riley said I was not strong enough to handle real pressure. That was the pattern with Riley. Riley did not just want a disagreement. Riley wanted a story where I was small and Riley was big. Riley wanted me to accept that story. When Riley walked away, Riley did it slowly, like a person leaving a stage after applause. Riley glanced around at the other parents. Riley wanted to see who was watching. I got back in my car and sat there for a moment. My hands were on the steering wheel, but I was not driving yet. I breathed in and out, slow. I told myself I was safe. I told myself Leah was inside. I told myself I did not need to win a parking lot conversation. On the drive to work, I kept thinking about how we got here. When I met Riley, things were different. Riley was fun and bright. Riley spoke with confidence. Riley made plans and pushed forward. I was quieter. I liked routines. I liked calm evenings. I thought we balanced each other. At first, Riley praised my calm. Riley said I made life feel steady. Riley said I was reliable. Riley said I listened. Then, little by little, Riley started using that same calm as a label. Riley started saying I was slow. Riley started saying I was too careful. Riley started saying I was not bold enough. When Leah was born, I changed my whole life around her. I took a job with better hours instead of better pay. I stopped seeing friends as much. I stopped spending on hobbies. I wanted to be present. I wanted to be the stable parent. Riley said they wanted that too. Riley said family was everything. Riley said we were a team. But Riley also liked attention. Riley liked praise. Riley liked being the loud one in the room. Over time, Riley began to act like my role was to keep the wheels turning quietly while Riley got the spotlight. If I brought up a concern, Riley would act like I was ruining the mood. Riley would tell me I was too sensitive. Riley would tell me I was imagining things. Riley would tell me a real partner would not question them. I learned to choose my battles. I learned to speak less. I told myself it was better for Leah if the house stayed peaceful. I told myself I could take a few sharp words if it kept the home stable. That is how it started. Not with one big event, with small moments that trained me to accept less. After we split, Riley did not accept the new boundaries. Riley acted like the breakup was a challenge, not a decision. Riley acted like the goal was to pull me back into the old shape, where Riley pushed and I adjusted. At first, Riley used politeness. Riley sent messages that sounded friendly, but they had small demands inside. Riley would ask to switch days at the last minute. Riley would ask for extra time. Riley would ask for favors and act surprised if I said no. When I agreed, Riley treated it like proof that Riley still ran the schedule. When I did not agree, Riley treated it like an attack. The co-parent handoffs became a stage. We used a sidewalk corner near the neighborhood entrance because it was neutral and there were cameras nearby. I chose it for safety and structure. Riley hated that. Riley wanted the handoffs at my front door. Riley wanted to step onto my property. Riley wanted to feel in control again. On the sidewalk corner, Riley could not do that. So Riley found other ways. Riley would show up late and act like it was nothing. Riley would arrive smiling and then, in a low voice, make comments meant to cut. Riley would talk about how everyone thought I was difficult. Riley would say people at school asked why I looked tired. Riley would say Leah needed a stronger parent around. One time, Riley arrived early and stood with Leah while I was still parking. When I walked up, Riley told Leah to say goodbye quickly, like I was a stranger. Leah looked at the ground and did what Riley said. I did not argue. I told Leah I would see her soon. I kept my voice soft. I watched Riley's face, and I could tell Riley liked it. Riley liked making me look like the outsider in my own child's life. Another time, Riley brought a friend to the handoff. The friend stood a few steps behind, arms crossed, watching me like I was on trial. Riley spoke louder than usual and said I needed to learn cooperation. Riley said I was making things hard. Riley said I was only thinking about myself. People walked by. A couple with a dog slowed down, then kept moving. A driver rolled past, glancing over. Riley did not care about solving anything. Riley cared about being seen as the person in the right. I tried to talk to Riley privately about keeping handoffs calm. I said Leah felt tense. I said she needed stability. Riley answered by saying Leah was fine and I was the one making it weird. Riley said I was trying to control Riley. Riley said I needed to stop acting like a victim, so I stopped trying to convince Riley. I moved into practical mode. I kept messages short. I kept schedules written down. I kept reminders in my phone. I saved every change request. I did not announce that I saved them. I just did it. I started meeting Omar from work for coffee sometimes. Omar was not a close friend, but he was steady. We worked in policy and compliance. Omar understood paperwork and patterns. At the coffee shop, I did not speak like someone telling a dramatic story. I spoke like someone asking how to keep things clean. I told Omar I had a co-parent who kept breaking routine and pushing boundaries. I told him I wanted to protect my child and protect myself without getting pulled into a public fight. Omar said a simple thing that stuck with me. He said emotions fade, but records stay. He said calm people win when they stay consistent. I nodded and thanked him. I did not tell him everything. I did not want to sound paranoid. But inside, I felt that same clarity I felt the night before. Not anger, not a need to strike back. Just a clear sense that I needed structure. A few days after the 2 a.m. incident, I went to the neighborhood association office during my lunch break. I told myself it was just to ask about general safety rules. I wanted to understand what systems existed, even if people avoided using them. The office was small. A receptionist sat behind a desk with neat stacks of paper. A bulletin board had event notices and reminders about quiet hours. It all looked official, but also tired, like a place that did not like conflict. I asked about noise complaints and gate tampering. I asked what people usually did. The receptionist gave a practiced answer. They said people should talk to each other first. They said they did not want to get involved unless it was serious. I smiled and thanked them. I left without pushing, but I noticed how it worked. The rules existed, but people relied on social pressure to keep peace. That is where someone like Riley thrived. Riley could push right up to the edge and count on everyone to avoid doing anything. That was the real problem. Not one night at 2 a.m. The whole environment that taught Riley there would be no real response. At home, I tried to keep Leah's life normal. I made dinner, I checked homework, I asked about school. One evening, after dishes, Leah sat at the kitchen table and traced a line on the wood with her finger. She asked why Riley talked to me like I was a child. Her question was calm, but it hurt. It showed me she noticed everything. It showed me she was collecting her own lessons from what she saw. I told her I could not control how other people spoke. I told her I could control how I responded. I told her respect matters, even when someone tries to make you feel small. Leah asked if Riley would keep coming at night. I paused. I did not want to promise something I could not guarantee. I told her we were going to set stronger boundaries. I told her I would handle it the right way. She nodded, but her eyes stayed worried. Then she asked if she did something wrong. That was the moment I felt the real cost. Riley's behavior was not just about me. It was shaping Leah's sense of safety. It was teaching her that loud people get their way. I told her she did nothing wrong. I told her adults make choices, and children should not carry adult problems. I told her my job was to keep her safe and calm. After she went to bed, I stood in my kitchen alone and looked at the dark window. The streetlight outside made the glass look like a mirror. I saw my own tired face looking back. I understood something then. My silence had protected peace for a while, but it also gave Riley room to grow bolder. Riley saw my calm as permission. Riley saw my restraint as weakness. I went to my home office and sat at the desk. I opened my calendar. I looked at the notes I already had. I did not feel dramatic. I felt focused. I created a simple list: dates, times, places, short descriptions. Nothing emotional, just facts. I did not tell anyone I started doing that. I did not announce a plan. I just made sure I could see the pattern clearly. And every time Riley sent a message that tried to push me off balance, I saved it and moved on with my day. A week after that night, Riley started acting like the street belonged to them again. It was not loud thumping this time. It was something colder. Riley began to use timing, small pressure, and public moments. Riley knew exactly where I did not want a scene. It started with messages. Riley wrote at strange hours. Not as late as 2 a.m., but late enough to feel like a hand on my shoulder when I was trying to sleep. Riley said Leah should come over early the next day. Riley said the normal exchange time was not good. Riley said I needed to be flexible if I cared about Leah. I answered with short lines. I said we could follow the schedule. I said changes needed notice. I said Leah needed routine. Riley replied with a long paragraph. Riley said I was controlling. Riley said I was making life hard for no reason. Riley said I liked to hide behind rules because I could not handle direct talk. I did not argue. I wrote back one sentence. I said I would be at the exchange spot at the normal time. The next afternoon, I parked at the sidewalk corner like always. I waited. Cars passed. A dog barked behind a fence. The air smelled like wet leaves. Riley arrived 10 minutes late and stepped out smiling. Leah got out too, moving slowly. Her eyes flicked toward me, then down. Riley walked over and spoke in a friendly voice that carried to anyone nearby. Riley said I needed to relax. Riley said I was always tense. Riley said Leah could feel my mood, and it was not good for her. I looked at Leah and kept my face calm. I told her hello and asked if she had a good day. She nodded, but she did not say much. Riley kept talking. Riley said I needed to stop playing the quiet hero. Riley said I thought being calm made me right. Riley said people were starting to notice I was difficult. I did not react. I did not raise my voice. I kept my hands at my sides and stayed a respectful distance away. Then Riley did something new. Riley turned toward Leah and asked her, in front of me, if she felt safe at my house. The question landed like a stone. Leah froze. She looked at me and then at Riley. Her mouth opened a little, then closed. I could see her trying to find the correct answer, not the true one. My chest tightened, but I kept my voice steady. I told Riley that questions like that should not be asked in public. I told Riley we could speak later through proper channels. Riley smiled wider. Riley said I was avoiding the question because I was guilty of something. Riley said Leah should not have to live with a person who always looked tired and angry. I felt something shift inside me, not rage, not heat, more like a door closing. Riley was not just insulting me. Riley was using my child as a tool. Riley was trying to plant fear and doubt inside Leah. Riley was trying to make my home feel unsafe in her mind, even if nothing unsafe was happening. That was the line. I lowered my gaze for a second and breathed in. I told myself to stay clean. I told myself to stay factual. I told myself to protect Leah from this moment. I looked at Leah and spoke to her only. I told her she could get in the car. I told her we were going home. I told her we could talk after dinner if she wanted. Leah moved toward my car without a word. I opened the door for her and waited until she was inside. Riley called after me, still using that public voice. Riley said I could not handle simple questions. Riley said I was not strong enough to be a proper parent. Riley said the school would hear about my behavior. I did not answer. I closed Leah's door gently. I got into the driver's seat and drove away without looking back. In the rearview mirror, I saw Riley standing there with a confident posture, like they had won something. That posture told me everything. Riley did not want truth. Riley wanted control. At home, I kept the evening routine steady. I made dinner. Leah ate quietly. She pushed food around her plate more than she ate. Afterward, she helped me rinse dishes without me asking. That was another sign she felt tense. When we sat on the couch, Leah asked why Riley asked that question outside. I told her that sometimes adults ask questions to make other adults look bad. I told her it was not fair. I told her she did not have to answer those questions in public. She nodded slowly and asked if something was wrong with her for not answering. I told her nothing was wrong with her. I told her she did the safest thing. I told her her job was to be a kid, not to carry adult arguments. She looked at her hands and asked if Riley was going to keep showing up. I did not promise it would stop overnight. I told her I was going to handle it properly. I told her I would keep her safe and keep her life calm. I said it in a steady voice because if I sounded unsure, she would feel it. After Leah went to her room, I went to my home office and sat down at the desk. The folder labeled Timeline was still there. I opened it and added that exchange moment, with the date and time and exact words as best as I could remember. I did not write feelings. I wrote facts. I added another page for anything that involved Leah directly. I wrote a note to myself. Do not let her become a messenger. Then I opened my calendar and circled a date 2 weeks away. That was the next scheduled review meeting for custody and scheduling. It was a normal step, not dramatic, but now I saw it as a turning point. I also wrote down something Marla said the night she stepped into my hallway. She told me that noise becomes a record when the right people pay attention. The next day at work, I asked Omar if he could spare 5 minutes in a conference room. I did not want to talk in the open office. I did not want curious ears. Omar sat across from me and waited without pushing. That was one of the reasons I trusted him. I told him the basics. I told him my ex was escalating. I told him there was a child involved. I told him I wanted to stay calm and follow the system, but I also wanted to stop the pressure before it got worse. Omar listened and nodded. He told me not to speak in big emotional sentences and messages. He told me to keep everything simple and consistent. He told me to think in timelines, not arguments. I asked him what to do when someone tries to bait you in public. Omar said the public scene is the trap. He said calm is good, but calm with structure is better. He said it helps to have a witness who is neutral. He said it helps to have clear rules in writing, even if you never show them to the other person until the right time. I thanked him. I left that room feeling steadier, like my mind had a map again. That evening, I fixed the side door latch. I replaced the worn part and tested it 3 times. I also checked the front gate and straightened the latch that Riley had hit. I did it quietly, without drama. The work itself helped me. It made the house feel like mine again. 2 days later, I got a call from a number I did not recognize. I let it ring once, then answered. It was Tessa, the property manager for the neighborhood association. Her voice was polite but tight. She said there had been a complaint about tension at my home. She said someone reported loud conflict and fear in the area. I understood right away. Riley was building a paper trail, but not the honest kind. Riley was trying to paint me as the source of instability. I kept my voice neutral. I told Tessa I understood her role. I told her I wanted the neighborhood safe too. I told her I would appreciate it if she could tell me the date and time of the complaint so I could check my own notes. Tessa paused. Then she said she could not share everything, but she could tell me it was related to a late-night incident. I thanked her and told her I would respond properly. I did not argue. I did not accuse Riley. I did not raise my voice. I ended the call politely. Then I wrote the call down in my timeline folder. I wrote the time of the call. I wrote the key phrases Tessa used. I wrote that Riley was now reaching into the neighborhood system. That night, Riley sent another message. Riley said I was embarrassing myself by involving neighbors. Riley said I was trying to act like a good guy while creating trouble. Riley said I would regret making Riley look bad. I stared at the message for a few seconds. I felt that old urge to explain, to defend, to tell the full story, to prove I was reasonable. Then I felt the door inside me close again. I answered with one sentence. I said I would communicate only about Leah and only about schedule details. Riley replied fast. Riley said I could not silence them. Riley said they would show up whenever they wanted. Riley said I could not stop them. I did not respond. The next exchange, Riley tried to change the location again. Riley said the sidewalk corner was unsafe. Riley said we should meet at my front door. I wrote back that the exchange spot was neutral and stayed the same for everyone's comfort. I wrote that I would be there at the scheduled time. Riley arrived early and waited in a way that felt like a challenge. When I pulled up, Riley stood with arms crossed and watched me approach. Leah stood beside Riley, holding her bag. Riley spoke in that smooth voice again and said I was making things hard. Riley said I was stubborn. Riley said Leah deserved a parent who could act normal. I did not bite. I greeted Leah, took her bag, and walked her to my car. Riley said something else as I did that. Riley said I was not man enough to face a direct conversation. I did not respond to the phrase. I did not correct it or argue with it. I treated it like background noise. That was the only way to keep it from becoming my reality. On the drive home, Leah asked why Riley said those things. I told her that some people feel strong when they put others down. I told her it is not real strength. I told her real strength looks calm and steady, especially when you are responsible for someone else. She looked out the window and nodded once. She did not look fully convinced, but she heard me. That night, after Leah went to bed, I made a decision that felt quiet and final. I was done trying to teach Riley respect through patience. From that point on, I treated every message, every exchange, and every outside contact as part of a record. I stayed polite, I stayed brief, I stayed consistent, I stopped giving Riley extra chances to be reasonable, because those chances were only fuel. I also called Marla. I did not tell her everything. I simply thanked her for what she did that night. I asked her a question. Why did Riley react that way when she spoke? Marla was quiet for a moment. Then she told me she used to work around court services and neighborhood mediation. She told me she knew how late-night incidents get handled when they are documented properly. She told me that people like Riley often depend on everyone staying informal. She said something else that stayed with me. She said the calm voice is not the soft voice. It is the prepared voice. When I hung up, I sat in my office chair and looked at the timeline folder on my desk. I did not feel excited. I did not feel proud. I felt clear. Riley thought my calm meant I would keep absorbing the pressure. Riley thought I would keep taking it because I wanted peace. But peace was not the same as surrender. And that night at the exchange spot showed me that the cost of surrender was my child's sense of safety. So I opened a new folder beside the timeline. I labeled it with a simple word, process. Then I turned off the light in my office and went to bed, already knowing I would not handle this in the street or in a parking lot anymore. I would handle it through the systems Riley kept trying to bend. The next 2 weeks were quiet on the surface, but busy underneath. At work, I did my normal tasks, but my mind stayed organized in a new way. I stopped thinking in arguments and started thinking in patterns. I looked at everything Riley did as a sequence that could be measured. I kept my face calm in the office, even when my stomach felt tight. I did not want my stress to leak into the parts of my life that still worked. One afternoon, I asked Omar if he could show me how he formats incident notes for internal reviews. Not because I wanted to file anything at work, but because he was good at clean writing. He knew how to write facts without sounding dramatic. He knew how to avoid emotional language while still being clear. We sat in a small conference room with a glass wall. People walked by outside, carrying laptops and coffee. It was normal office life. That normal feeling helped me. Omar pulled up a template and explained it in simple terms. He said it was important to separate what happened from what you think about what happened. He said dates and times matter. He said direct actions matter. He said you should write like the reader does not know you and does not know the other person and does not care about either of you. He said the reader only cares about clear steps and clear outcomes. I told him that made sense. I thanked him and went back to my desk. That evening, after Leah went to bed, I sat in my home office and rewrote a few of my timeline notes using that method. I removed words like felt and seemed. I replaced them with specific details. I wrote down where I stood, where Riley stood, what time it happened, and who else was nearby. When I was not sure of an exact word, I wrote approximate phrase, and then wrote the closest match. It felt strange at first, like I was turning my life into a report. But after a few pages, I felt calmer. The mess in my head became a straight line on paper. Riley kept pushing in small ways. Riley continued to write messages that tried to pull me into longer conversations. Riley would ask about Leah, but then add comments about me. Riley would make demands and then act hurt when I did not agree. Riley would act like the schedule was a suggestion, not a structure. I stayed brief. I answered only what mattered for Leah. If Riley sent 5 paragraphs, I sent 1 sentence. That made Riley more confident, not less. Riley took my silence as proof that the strategy worked. At the next school pickup, Riley positioned himself near the walkway and waited. When I arrived, Riley smiled like we were friends. Riley greeted another parent and spoke loudly enough for me to hear. Riley said some people cannot handle stress and should not try to control everything. Riley said some people use rules to hide their weakness. A few parents laughed politely. Nobody challenged it. Nobody wanted to be involved. I kept walking. I did not turn my head. I did not change my pace. I picked up Leah and we left. In the car, Leah stared out the window and asked why Riley always talked like the world was watching. I told her some people feel safer when they feel admired. I told her it is not her job to fix that. I told her job was school, friends, and being a kid. She nodded, but I could tell she was storing the information like she stored everything these days. 2 days later, Tessa called again. Her voice was still polite, but more serious this time. She said there had been another report about ongoing tension. She said the association preferred not to get involved, but safety rules existed for a reason. I told her I understood. I asked if there was a formal process. I asked what the next step was when a pattern continued. Tessa paused and said there could be a safety review meeting, but those were rare. She said they usually happened only when there were multiple reports or clear concerns. I said I appreciated the clarity. I said I wanted things to stay calm and consistent, and I wanted any process to be fair and based on facts. Tessa asked if I could come to the association office later that week to talk. I agreed. I chose a time during daylight hours. I kept my tone neutral. When I ended the call, I wrote it down in the folder. Riley sent a message that same night, like they knew. Riley wrote that I was trying to turn the neighborhood against them. Riley wrote that I was weak for needing outside help. Riley wrote that I would not win. I did not answer. Instead, I opened my calendar and made a simple note. Association meeting, Thursday. I also made a second note, bring timeline summary. I did not write the word proof. I did not write anything that sounded like revenge. I wrote it like a work task. Thursday came fast. I went to the neighborhood association office during my lunch break. The office smelled like paper and old carpet. The receptionist looked up and recognized me this time. Tessa met me in a small room with 2 chairs and a table. She wore a neat blouse and carried a folder. She looked tired, like a person who deals with complaints all day and rarely sees a good outcome. She asked me to explain what happened, starting with the late-night incident. She asked about the gate. She asked about the shouting. She asked if I felt safe. I kept my answers short and factual. I said there was loud noise after 2 a.m. I said my child was in the home. I said my ex-partner was at the gate. I said there were threats. I said a neighbor witnessed it and intervened. I did not use dramatic words. I did not describe fear in big language. I simply stated facts. Tessa asked why I did not call for help right away. I told her I wanted to avoid escalation and protect my child. I told her my first step was to keep the door closed and keep my child away from the windows. I told her the situation ended quickly after my neighbor spoke. Tessa nodded slowly. She asked if I had any record of the messages Riley sent. I did not pull anything out. I did not show screenshots. I remembered the rule I set for myself. I did not display documents or records early. I only confirmed they existed. So I told her I had saved messages related to schedule changes and late-night contact. I told her I kept a timeline for my own clarity and consistency. I told her I was willing to follow any formal process. Tessa's expression changed slightly. It was not dramatic, but it was a shift. She looked less like someone hearing a messy story and more like someone hearing a pattern. She said the association could schedule a safety review meeting if needed. She said it would involve clear rules about quiet hours and behavior near homes. She said it could also include formal exchange guidelines within the neighborhood if it became a repeated issue. I nodded and said I understood. I said I wanted a calm, predictable environment for my child. When I left, I did not feel excited. I felt steady. The system was slow, but it existed, and I had finally stepped into it properly. That afternoon, I met Omar again for coffee. I told him, in general terms, that the association might schedule a review meeting. I asked him how to stay consistent when someone tries to twist words. Omar told me to keep my language boring. He said boring language is hard to twist. He said I should never write a message I would not want read in front of a neutral person. He said I should treat every message like it might be reviewed later. I told him I already started doing that. He nodded like he expected it. That night, I went to the local print shop after dinner. It was a small place with humming machines and shelves of paper. The owner barely looked up, just asked what I needed. I asked for simple copies of a few things I prepared at home, nothing flashy. I asked for clean stapling and plain covers. I asked for 2 sets. When the worker handed them to me, I placed them into plain envelopes. I did not label them with big words. I wrote only dates on the corner. Then I put them into my backpack and brought them home. Leah saw the backpack by my desk and asked what I was doing. I told her I was organizing life stuff, the same way people organize school notes. I told her I wanted our weeks to feel calmer. I told her I was making sure grown-ups followed the schedule so she did not have to worry. She seemed relieved by that. She did not ask more. Over the next week, Riley became louder in public again, but more careful in private. Riley avoided writing certain phrases in messages. Riley started pushing during handoffs instead, using tone and body language. At the exchange spot, Riley would stand too close. Riley would lean forward like they wanted to make me step back. Riley would smile and speak in a voice that sounded friendly to anyone watching, but carried sharp meaning. Riley told me I was overreacting. Riley told me I was trying to be a hero. Riley told me I was weak for needing systems. I did not respond. I focused on Leah. I greeted her. I asked about school. I said goodbye. I kept the exchange under 2 minutes. One afternoon, Riley arrived with a new person again, a friend I did not recognize. The friend stood off to the side and watched. Riley spoke louder than usual and said I was making everyone's life hard. I did not react. I kept my face calm. I helped Leah into the car and drove away. At home, Leah asked who the other person was. I told her it was just someone Riley brought along. I told her adults sometimes bring other adults as support. I told her she did not need to worry about it. She asked if Riley was trying to scare me. I paused, then chose my words carefully. I told her Riley was trying to get a reaction. I told her that is how some people feel powerful. I told her my job was to stay calm and keep our routine. She nodded slowly, then asked if we were going to move. I felt a tight pull in my chest. I told her we were not making big changes right now. I told her we were building stability, not running away. I told her she deserved to feel safe in her own room. After she went to bed, I sat at my desk and updated the timeline again. I wrote down that Riley brought an extra person. I wrote down the date and time. I wrote down that Riley used a louder public voice. I wrote down that the extra person observed. I kept it simple. Just facts. The next day, I got an email notification for a scheduled meeting related to custody routine review. It was a standard step, but the timing mattered. It landed in the same window as the association's plan to review safety rules. I did not celebrate. I did not panic. I simply updated my calendar. I added one more note to myself. Stay boring. Stay consistent. That weekend, I ran into Marla while taking out the trash. She asked how things were going. I told her the situation was still tense, but I was handling it properly. I told her I was keeping records and using formal channels. Marla nodded and said she was glad. She said people like Riley often depend on everyone staying informal and tired. She said structure changes the whole balance. Before she went back inside, she told me one more thing. She said the hardest part is staying calm when the other person starts to realize they cannot push you anymore. She said that is when they often try one last big performance. That night, I lay in bed and listened to the house again. The heater clicked, the fridge hummed, the street outside stayed quiet. I did not feel relaxed, but I felt prepared. In my home office, the envelope sat in my backpack. My calendar had 2 important dates circled. My messages stayed short and clean. My timeline kept growing into a clear picture. And Riley, without realizing it, was still giving me more material every time they tried to force a scene. The week before the review meeting felt like the air before a storm. Everything looked normal. I still went to work. I still made Leah breakfast. I still packed her lunch and reminded her about homework. But inside my head, everything was arranged into clear steps. I stopped hoping Riley would suddenly change. I stopped waiting for an apology. I stopped thinking one more calm talk would fix it. Instead, I focused on what I could control. I could control my routine. I could control my words. I could control the way I showed up. At work, I stayed steady. I finished tasks early. I kept my email short and clear. I did not complain to coworkers. I did not hint at drama. I did not want my personal life to spread into my job. Omar noticed I was quieter than usual. One afternoon, he asked if I was sleeping at all. I told him I was sleeping enough. I told him I was preparing for a formal meeting that would set clearer rules. I said I wanted to do it properly and keep it simple. Omar nodded and told me to keep my tone neutral even if the other person tried to perform. He told me most systems do not reward strong emotion. He told me they reward clear facts and consistent behavior. I told him I understood. I did not say more than that. That night, I cleaned my garage. It sounds small, but it mattered. My garage had turned into a place where I dropped things and forgot them. Boxes, old tools, random bags. It matched the feeling of the past months, like my life was packed into corners and ignored. I cleared a path. I stacked boxes neatly. I found the spare gate parts I bought and never used. I checked the outdoor lights and replaced a weak bulb. I did not do it because I thought light would solve everything. I did it because it reminded me that this was my home and I could keep it stable. Leah came out at one point with a blanket around her shoulders. She asked why I was doing so much cleaning. I told her I wanted the house to feel calm. I told her when life feels messy, clean spaces help the brain relax. I said it was like organizing a desk before a test. She smiled a little at that. She understood the idea. Then she asked the question I knew was coming. She asked if the meeting meant things would change with Riley. I kept my voice gentle. I told her the goal was not to punish anyone. I told her the goal was to make the schedule clear and peaceful. I told her children do best when adults follow routines. Leah looked down at the floor and asked if she would have to choose sides. I felt that tight pull in my chest again. I told her she did not have to choose sides. I told her she was allowed to love both parents. I told her my job was to keep her away from adult pressure. She nodded, but she did not look fully relaxed. She asked if Riley would be angry. I did not want to lie. I told her Riley might be upset for a while. I told her sometimes people get upset when they do not get their way. I told her that does not mean the rules are wrong. It means the rules are working. Leah went back inside, and I stayed in the garage a little longer. I listened to the neighborhood sounds, a car door closing, someone's radio far away, a dog barking once and then stopping. I thought about how Riley used to control the mood of every room. If Riley was happy, the room was allowed to be happy. If Riley was upset, everyone had to tiptoe. Over time, I learned to read Riley like weather. I was done living like that. 2 days later, Tessa sent a short message asking if I could attend a safety review session at the association office. The tone was formal. The time was during the day. It sounded like a real process now, not a casual chat. I replied politely and said yes. Riley sent a message that same evening, like clockwork. Riley said I was making things bigger than they needed to be. Riley said I was trying to look like a good parent while causing trouble. Riley said I was going to embarrass myself. I did not argue. I replied with one sentence about Leah's pickup time the next day. Riley answered with more words, trying to pull me into the old back and forth. I did not respond after that. I could feel Riley's pressure rising, like a person pushing a door that no longer opened. At home, I prepared in quiet ways. I checked my calendar every morning. I kept the dates circled. I kept reminders set. I made sure Leah's school week was not overloaded. I made sure her clothes were ready and her backpack was packed the night before. I also fixed small things around the house that I had ignored. The loose cabinet hinge, the squeaky step near the hallway, the gate latch that still looked slightly bent. Each small fix felt like a message to myself. I was not drifting anymore. I was steering. In my home office, the folders stayed in the same place on the desk. The one labeled Timeline, the one labeled Process. I did not leave them open. I did not let Leah see the pages. I treated it like a private work file. I also prepared 2 plain envelopes again. I did not label them with bold words. I wrote only dates in the corner, the way I would label a bill or a school form. I did not feel excited when I did this. I felt steady. The association session came first. I went to the office during lunch again. The same old carpet smell. The same tired bulletin board. But this time, the mood was different. Tessa sat with another person I had not met before, someone who looked like they worked with policy and safety. They introduced themselves and explained that the association had rules for quiet hours and behavior near homes. They said they wanted to reduce repeated incidents. They asked me to describe what happened and when it happened. I kept my answers short. I gave dates and times. I described behavior, not personality. I avoided guesses about motives. I kept it boring. When they asked if I had kept records, I said yes. I said I kept my communication consistent and saved messages related to scheduling. I said I wanted a simple routine that supported my child. Tessa asked if Riley had been told to stop. I said I asked for calm exchanges and predictable schedules. I said I avoided public arguments. I said I did not go to the gate or engage during late-night noise. The other person nodded and made notes. They said the association could issue clear instructions about quiet hours and unwanted contact at homes. They said they could also recommend that handoffs remain at a neutral location. They said they would document the safety concerns in their system. I thanked them and left. In the parking lot, I sat in my car for a minute and let myself breathe. I did not feel like I won anything. I felt like I finally stopped pretending this was a private problem that would fix itself. That evening, Marla stopped by my front walkway as I brought the trash bin in. She asked how things were going. I told her I was using formal channels and staying consistent. I told her the association was involved now and a review meeting was scheduled soon. Marla nodded and said that was good. She said the key was not to chase the other person's emotions. She said it is easy to get pulled into the loud part. She said I needed to keep living inside the calm part. I told her I would. Before she left, she said one more thing that stayed with me. She said, when people lose control, they often try to create one last big scene to feel powerful again. She told me to expect a performance. I thanked her and went inside. The next morning, Riley showed up at the school parking lot again, like it was a planned stage. Riley stood near other parents and spoke in a friendly voice. Riley said some people hide behind systems because they cannot face real conversations. Riley said some people use paperwork to control others. A couple of parents looked uncomfortable, but nobody spoke. People do not like being pulled into someone else's conflict. I did not respond. I walked past and focused on Leah. I asked her about a quiz she mentioned earlier in the week. I asked if she wanted pasta or rice for dinner. In the car, Leah asked why Riley was talking like that again. I told her some adults try to win by making other adults look bad. I told her it is not a healthy way to solve problems. I told her that is why rules exist. She asked if the meeting meant someone would tell Riley to stop. I told her the meeting would create clearer steps and clearer boundaries. I told her it might take time, but the goal was to make her life calmer. That night, I packed my work bag carefully. I packed Leah's snack for the next day. I set my alarm early. I did not drink extra coffee. I did not pace. I did not sit and stare at my phone. Instead, I did what I always did when I needed to stay calm. I made a simple checklist. Wake up, breakfast, school drop-off, work tasks, drive to the meeting location, stay steady. I kept my messages short. I did not send anything extra to Riley. I did not warn Riley. I did not threaten. I did not hint at anything. I also made sure Leah had what she needed emotionally. After dinner, we sat on the couch and watched a simple show. Nothing heavy, nothing intense, just normal sounds and normal jokes. At bedtime, Leah hugged me longer than usual. She asked if tomorrow would be stressful. I told her tomorrow was a day for adults to follow rules. I told her she would go to school like always. I told her I would pick her up like always. I told her she could focus on being a kid. She nodded and went to her room. When the house became quiet, I stood in the hallway and listened. The heater clicked. The fridge hummed. The same normal sounds. But I knew something important had changed. Before, I had been trying to survive Riley's pressure by staying quiet and hoping it would pass. Now, I was staying quiet for a different reason. I was staying quiet because I was ready and because the next step was not about words in a driveway or a parking lot. It was about a formal room, formal rules, and a calm process that did not care who spoke the loudest. The morning of the review, I did everything the same way I always did. Breakfast, school, drop-off, a calm goodbye at the door. Then I drove to the courthouse early and sat in the parking lot until my breathing felt even. Inside the lobby, the air smelled like paper and floor cleaner. People moved in quiet lines. A clerk called names without emotion. When my case number printed, the sound was sharp and steady, like a machine that did not care about anyone's mood. Riley arrived 10 minutes later, dressed like it was an event. Riley spoke loudly, smiling at strangers, acting like I was being dramatic. Riley said I was trying to control everything with paperwork. Riley said I was scared to face a direct conversation. I did not answer. I nodded at the clerk and followed the process. When we were called in, I spoke in short sentences. I gave dates. I gave times. I described the late-night gate incident as a fact, not a story. I explained how exchanges were disrupted and how Leah reacted afterward. I confirmed I had saved messages and kept a timeline. I said I wanted clear rules so my child could rest. Marla was present as a witness. She spoke in the same calm tone she used that night. She described what she heard and what she saw at the gate. Tessa's notes from the association review were entered into the record. The safety officer confirmed the neighborhood rules about quiet hours and unwanted contact near homes. Riley tried to interrupt, then tried to laugh, then tried to turn it into my attitude. The room did not follow Riley's lead. The decision came in plain language. Exchanges would stay at the neutral spot. Contact would be limited to schedule and school needs. Late-night visits and gate contact were forbidden. The association issued a formal notice tied to quiet hours and property access. In the lobby, Riley was handed the written instructions. Riley